All right, Barbara, listen, you have some outstanding information today. You know, we're thinking about making you a deputy sheriff here. So, hey, you've turned over, and I think we talked about him on a previous show, but you have now about to expose what they have dubbed the mastermind of poaching?
Well, that's what a number of South African newspapers are calling this individual and the 10 other people that were arrested at the same time with him in regards to those rhino poaching rings that I'm sure all of the viewers have heard about. Just hundreds and hundreds of rhinos have been killed over the last few years just to remove their horns and sell the horns in Asia to the traditional medicine market. There are people still throughout Asia that believe that rhino horn is a cure for a whole array of illnesses, including cancer. And the amount of money that people are willing to pay is so high that it has made rhino poaching a very lucrative industry for some individuals. And I've told you about this person before. Several months ago, Dawie Grunewald of South Africa Adventurous Safaris was arrested here in the United States by U.S. Fish and Wildlife. He was arrested, jailed, tried, and convicted for Lacey Act violations. You'll remember that particular case involved him having a hunter hunt a leopard in South Africa without a leopard permit. And then he held that trophy, gave the hunter the runaround for 2 years until he was finally able to get an export permit from South Africa. And then he exported that leopard and falsely put on the documentation that it had been hunted that year. And upon being imported into the United States, it made it a Lacey Act violation. And when he was here, he was arrested. Well, he paid a big fine, $30,000, went back home to South Africa, and I made a few phone calls to find out, was he being arrested in South Africa? Because after all, it was documented that and proven U.S. Fish and Wildlife had worked with the conservation people over in the Limpopo province of South Africa. They knew that he had illegally hunted this leopard. Why had he not been arrested? Well, then I get the news just last week that he was arrested in a sweep with 10 other people in regards to this rhino poaching ring. So apparently there was an investigation already going on over there, and that's why he hadn't been arrested for the leopard. They wanted him for something much bigger, apparently. The news broke. 9 people were initially arrested. 2 more were arrested after that. They've all been bonded out of court by now. Their trial is supposed to be sometime in April of 2011. In the meantime, they've all been required to turn over their passports and their identity papers. They're not supposed to leave the Limpopo province without giving police a week's notice. I understand that the farm, the game farm that Mr. Grunewald owns with his wife, Sari, has been searched by police looking for carcasses of rhinos. One of the reports that I saw from South Africa was that they had actually purchased rhinos from the parks, and this is very common practice. People purchase rhinos at auction, farmers do, and put them on their properties, and they either breed them or they do some hunts for them. But they're under very strict regulations on how they do those. And apparently Mr. Grunewald had bought some of those, and there was some question as to what had happened with those rhinos. They were still looking at the property the last time that I saw some reports from South Africa. So this is an ongoing investigation, and just so that everybody's aware, this investigation was headed by a group called HAWKS. And HAWKS is kind of like the equivalent of, you might say, a unit of the FBI here in the States. HAWKS is part of the, let me see if I can find it real quick here in my notes. They are part of the Priority Crime Investigation Department, which specifically targets organized crime, economic crime, corruption, and other crimes referred to it by the National Commissioner of the South African Police Service. Interestingly enough, Hawks used to be called the Scorpions. The Scorpions was disbanded and Hawks was created. I understand that many of the people from Scorpions were moved over to Hawks, but from what I understand, not everyone was. So this is a fairly new investigative unit. Now, the charges that the entire group has been charged with range from assault, defeating the ends of justice, fraud, corruption, malicious injury to property, illegal possession of firearms and ammunition, contravention of the National Environment Management Biodiversity Act, which has to do with the killing of the rhinos. Also contravention in terms of the Medicines and Related Substances Act, which would have to do with the illegal trade in animal parts as part of for medicinal purposes, as well as contravention of the Prevention of Organized Crime Act. So they've got some very serious charges against them, and we'll see as their investigation unfolds what happens over the next few months until they go to court again in April of 2011.
Yeah, so Barbara, let me see if I'm tracking this correctly. Let me back up just a little bit on you. Now, that you pronounce that Hawk as in H-O-K or H-W-A-K? What is
just
the
like
acronym?
The bird.
Like H-W-A-K?
H-A-W-K.
H-A-W-K, yes. Right. Okay, that's Hawk. And Hawk is ex-Scorpions that were an investigative unit of South Africa for animals only?
No, for any organized crime, economic crime,
okay.
Any kind of crime at that highly specialized level. You might equate them again to our FBI.
Right. Okay, good. All right, now, and I didn't even know that unit existed, so I'm happy to hear that.
Neither did I.
And so the other question I have then is, are they going to be tried in South Africa on the rhino charges and then tried in the United States on the leopard charges? Walk me through that.
Well, Grunewald has already been charged and tried and found guilty and penalized for the leopard charge here in the United States.
And that was just a fine?
I'm sorry?
That was just a fine?
He was charged $30,000, yes, and time served.
Okay.
And sent back home. And he's persona non grata in the United States now as a convicted felon.
Okay, so now he's back in South Africa. They're not holding him. He's out on what their version of a bail is, or a bond. Is that correct?
He is on bail.
Right. Okay, so he's out on bail, and he's going to be tried there for the rhino charges.
Correct.